A very pleasant evening to you out there. Thank you for joining us on another edition of the program National Talk on ECWA Television International. My name is Joyce Jakada, and tonight on National Talk, about 3 months after President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's assumption of office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 45 ministers have been sworn in as ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The President, at the inauguration of the ministers, said the ministers were selected following their track record of excellence and achievements in public and private sectors. The newly sworn-in ministers were charged by the President to bring to their new roles an assortment of excellence and expertise to safeguard the nation's affairs, as well as work in the interests of all Nigerians rather than their states or regions. The list included the former Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike as Minister of Federal Capital Territory (FCT) and Festus Keyamo as head of the Aviation Ministry, while Dele Alake will man the Solid Minerals Development Ministry. Other ministers are Wale Edun, Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Adegboyega Oyetola, Transportation, David Umahi, Works, and Betta Edu, Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, amongst others. The President reserved the Minister of Environment and Ecological Management for Kaduna State. Recall the former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai and 2 other ministerial nominees were screened by the Senate but were not confirmed. A replacement is expected from Kaduna State following the withdrawal of the ex-governor. To discuss Tinubu's new cabinet of 45 ministers, I have Comrade John Kele, Public Affairs Commentator. Good evening and welcome to National Talk.
Good evening. And a pleasure to be here.
You know, when I said public affairs commentator, I was sure that you're going to give us a lot when it comes to analyzing these 45 ministers. There are actually a lot of expectation, like looking at the times that we are in. Nigerians' expectations are high on the current administration. It is about 3 months since the assumption of office of the president, talking about Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And considering the hardship, the perilous times that we're in, people were hopeful that going by the constitution, like 60 days into office, names were going to be submitted to the Senate for screening and confirmation. There were actually high expectations. Before even the Senate affirming that lists were submitted, there were a lot of speculation on social media, high hopes. People were like, we hope he won't go the path of the former president where people waited, like they didn't get any list. But as we speak right now, 45 ministers have already been sworn in, and gladly, in accordance to the constitution, talking about section 42B, which stipulates that out of the nominated ministers, like about 10% of persons appointed shall be women, and in that list we've seen about 6 women being included. Now I just want to get your overall view and your take on this ministerial list. What do you make of the time frame relative to the constitutional provision and then the campaign promise of Bola Ahmed Tinubu of kickstarting or rolling the ground as soon as he's sworn in?
Well, I think basically Nigerians were expectant of what will happen, looking at what we've been through as a country. You remember during the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration that Nigeria became, or let me say Nigerians, about 135 million Nigerians were poor, multidimensionally. So when you talk about multi-dimensionally poverty index, it means that educationally, it means that health-wise, educationally, and what have you. So that was the situation. So Nigerians were grappling with a lot of challenges, as it were. So looking at what happened in the last election, that was 2023, on the 25th, where Nigerians also went to the polls to elect the president to represent them as a country. On the 29th of May, 2023, Nigerians were looking at a different phase. Different phase in the sense that the inaugural speech of a president resonates confidence, resonates hope, resonates, peace and stability as far as Nigeria is concerned. But unfortunately, what Nigerians got to hear was that as from today, subsidy is gone. By mere proclamation of that statement, it affected the entire spectrum of the Nigerian society. I bet you, on that day, I was driving. The same filling station I took fuel to where I was going to, as I was returning, that same filling station was locked. So Nigerians were now thinking, what are we going to envisage in the days ahead? And it continued not just for that day, but for the remainder of days that Nigerians were going to witness in the first phase of the administrations of the current government that we have in place. Now, what I'm saying in essence is that as a government, one thing that you need first is wisdom, empathy to the people that you govern. And the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria clearly states that the hallmark of governance is for the welfare and the security of Nigerians. But what we are saying probably is on the opposite of what is written in the Constitution. I've always told people that we have a voluminous document in the name of a constitution. But unfortunately, that constitution is like a novel. Once you read the pages or you go through the pages of a novel, the parts that you could grab stays in you. But the parts that you couldn't grab, it goes off. But that shouldn't be the case. But we should have a country where the laws are respected in total. We should have a country where the constitution becomes a key document that should be respected. If you go to other climes, what you see is that the citizens of the country challenge the government via the provisions of the constitution. They do not challenge the governors on just mere saying that someone said this and someone said that. And that is why when you see citizens of other climes on the streets, they are demanding for good governance. They are demanding for what is contained as it regards to the provisions of the Constitution. So in Nigeria, I don't think it should be a different case. It should be that we have a government in place, and the government is working towards sustaining the principles of what is provided in the Constitution, as in guaranteeing the fundamental principles and directive objectives of the Nigerian Constitution. But that is not the case. But today, we have ministers. 48 were submitted to the National Assembly for screening, and the National Assembly, in her wisdom, I would put it in her wisdom, but you know how it works in Nigeria. I don't think that it is in the wisdom of the National Assembly. I'm saying it in clear terms, because in Nigeria, interest supersedes the provisions of the Constitution. Because if the president has an interest based on his interaction with the inner caucus, because we have caucuses as far as governance in Nigeria is concerned. And I want to be very clear in this. There are caucuses. And as far as this issue is concerned, the government of Nigeria, there are individuals that are so superior in terms of relating to the writings of the provisions of the Constitution. And that goes to say that even the disqualification of the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, even what is happening in Delta State, Stella Oketete, even what is happening in Taraba State, because the president had submitted 48 names. and 45 were approved. We have pending 3 names. It is not as if the National Assembly refused deliberately to screen those 3 individuals. But the interest within the polity played out that the 3 individuals were not so cleared to be members of the Federal Executive Council. Because our politics within the context of Nigeria, the Constitution, even as a matter of fact, in section 157, if you read further, that you will have at least 1 minister to represent a state. If you go further, that the minister must be indigenous to the state that he is representing. And we saw within that period that the president had sent certain names, and the names were not complete as far as the provision of the Constitution is concerned. Because with the recent amendment of the Constitution, the president was supposed to send the names on or before 60 days. That's before screening. But the president had sent, a certain number to the National Assembly, and after the expiration of the 60 days, he now sent the batch B of the ministers to the National Assembly. That means that the president had acted in violation of the provisions of the Constitution, and nobody's talking about it. Because if we continue on this pedestal, that means that anyone that succeeds President Bola Ahmed Tinubu can come up tomorrow and submit 20 names after the expiration of the 60 days period, and probably submit additional few names. And when you query him, he will tell you that even the past president did the same. And that is the ambiguity as far as the laws of Nigeria are concerned. So what I'm saying in essence is that as a country, we should be known to be respecter of the provisions of the laws that governs our operations as a country.
But comrade, I get your concern and that you just shared, especially relative to the Constitution and all. But don't you think that at this time, where these 45 ministers have actually been sworn in, just that, like the president always emphasized, especially when he's addressing maybe the Federal Executive Council and other politicians, he always talk about the fact that, see, politics is far gone, like election is gone, can we focus on governance? Do you not think that with the emergence of these 45, the emphasis, the focus should be governance at the moment? I know people have talked about the fact that based on the provision of the Constitution, we should have each a minister at least from each state, and then going by this number, it's obvious that in some states we have about 2 or 3 ministers emerging. But don't you think that the focus at this moment should be about the work, putting in actions?
Well, before you put into action the work based on the statement issued by the president, even during the inaugural ceremony, the president had said very clearly that he was going to be the driver, and the ministers are going to be behind him, and Nigerians are expectant of good governance as far as the country is concerned. Sure. Good as the case may be, but the point we're looking at is that putting that before us does not neglect or negate the provisions that we have as a governing country, a sovereign country that is governed by law and regulations.
All right, I get your point.
Right.
Like you rightly quoted the president during the inauguration. I would just like us to quickly watch his speech, especially to the sworn-in ministers, talking about them not just focusing on state or region,
Absolutely.
but national interest.
Absolutely.
And already most of the ministers have already assumed office.
Absolutely.
Some of them have made press briefing, one of which is in Nyosom Wiki. A lot of people have come out to share concern about ego and hope he's not going to that this is Federal Capital Territory. It's not going to be about Rivers State. We've seen how people have made memes saying that the landlord is here. But I'd just like us to quickly watch the president as well as the ministers.
In line with the constitutional obligations, the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has screened and confirmed 45 ministers who wish to pretend over the Ministry of Federal Government in this administration of renewed hope. The men and women who have been sworn in have been carefully selected by me for their track record of excellence and achievement in public and private sector. Fellow Nigerians, the challenges we face today are very daunting. Yes, they are. Yet, amidst these evident challenges, we have the opportunity to implement long overdue reforms that will improve the operations of government, transform our nation's economy, and ensure peace, safety, and prosperity for our people. Minister of Federal Republic, you are not minister of a region or minister of a particular state. Nigeria expects that you will serve with integrity, dignity, and deliver. I will hold you to that standard. We all promise Nigerians.
We must come up with practicable ways of ensuring that our inland rivers, lakes, and waterways are well utilized, both in terms of cargo shipment and passenger transportation.
In due time, we'll also be unveiling a new vision for Nigeria's foreign policy, 4D diplomacy.
To refocus us back, we need to bring smiles back to the faces of Nigerians.
We shall be working with KPIs. If it is monthly, 3 times, 4 times in a year, please, you better let us all now recycle ourselves.
So, my brother, when you say the error of El-Rufai, what did he do wrong? After all, you people are the ones saying, after El-Rufai, nobody again, no minister will do anything. It's not what you will say. Say the truth. Now you are saying error of... you don't like those who will step on toes. I will step on toes. The big and the mighty, I will step on toes. If you are doing this wrong, I will do what I was supposed to do. I told the GMD of NNPC last night. I was with him. GMD, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Go and check your records. If that's your tower, you not pay their grand rep. Everything needs money too. If you have not paid their grand rep, go and prepare with Sirito. And I'm going to do it. Because you cannot be claiming FCT is not working. When you have not done your own part, do your own part, then be able to say, look, of all the money we have been paying, what are they using it in FCT? That is then when you have the moral to talk, not when you have not fulfilled your own obligation.
Hydrocarbons are going down. Oil, petroleum is going down globally in the economic sector. Now people are moving away from those areas Now you have electric cars, you have alternative fuel, you have gas, you have everything, which means our over-reliance on oil is going to be detrimental to the growth of the Nigerian economy moving forward. So what is the next bet? It is solid minerals. That's the next oil of Nigeria. Now, with this critical sector in mind, who will the president put there? The person he trusts most. The person who has a passion in his own estimation, who has a sense of responsibility, the knowledge, the vision, the courage.
Well, that was some of the ministers speaking, as well as the president also addressing them. You know, apart from the fact that Nyesom Wike was the immediate past governor of Rivers State, I think he was one of the ministers that received the highest applaud when he was mentioned.
Absolutely.
And he actually said he's going to step on toes of both the mighty and whatsoever you're scared of, that he's going to do that. In fact, he said he has the backing of the president. Like, what do you make of all these statements? Does it give hope?
Well, whether giving hope or not.
Because I remember earlier you were talking about the fact that no, all they did almost not constitutional and all of that. But with all these statements of we're going to do this, we'll do that, does it give hope?
Yeah, I think basically whether giving hope or not, you know, during electioneering campaigns, all political parties go out with a manifesto. And the manifesto contains so many issues. And at times, if you atomize those issues on the manifesto, could go about 40, 50 or so. Right. We had a past administration that came out with a voluminous manifesto of changing the change. And we saw what transformed into the governance of the past administration for the 8-year period. And now we're having a new administration with a vision or with a cliche of renewed hope. And there were also issues that the current administration had gone around telling Nigerians under the renewed hope agenda that they were going to achieve. Now, elections are gone. We're now settling into governance. And in the governing issue, you cannot take the entirety of the issues that you went about all the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT, into your policy document. So most of the issues now are streamlined into a policy document where you are now saying that we are now into governance. We are going to address the issue of insecurity. We're going to address the issue of the economy. We're going to address the issue of agriculture. We are going to address the issue of the master plan, as the case may be, as it relates to the Federal Capital Territory. Now, the government, as it is right now, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he is the custodian of the policy document as it relates to Nigeria as a country. Now, who are the people to convey the policy of the president, even down to the grassroots? The purveyors of that policy are the ministers. And that is why there are certain decisions that the president cannot take unless and until you have your cabinet in place. It relates to the federal government and even it relates to the state government. So at this point, the government, having these ministers in place, the 45 out of the 48 that he had submitted to the National Assembly, they are to convey the policy of this administration to the various ministries, departments, and agencies of government. So that means that the permanent secretaries in the various ministries, as the case may be, who are critical administrators, they are to interpret, because the ministers are to supervise the affairs of the various ministries. So the permanent secretaries are to interpret some of these administrative, directives issued by the president. and that will go down to the various departments of government. Now, at the state level also, it goes down because Nigeria or even the federal government is not working in isolation. When the government issued a policy directive, that policy directive goes even down to the local level. And the governors also at their own level, they intercept that, interpret same, and transmit same also to the administrative rudiment at the state level. It goes down even to the local government level. And that's where you have the chairman of a local government, you have supervisory councillors that will be the ones to supersede the affairs even at the local government. So that means that even at the grassroots, we should have some of these policies being well interpreted to the people that, I mean to the understanding of the ordinary people. But unfortunately, what we've seen over time is that once policies are made by the president, those policies remains at the realm of the administrative bureaucracy within the federal level. Those policies really gets down to the local level, and for the people to actually understand what the government is trying to send to them or what the government is trying to communicate to them in real time. And that is why there's a disconnect. As far as governance in Nigeria is concerned, there's a disconnect between the federal government and the local level. And why are we having that? Because the intermediary is not effective enough. Now, we're having a government where the exclusive powers vested on the president is too numerous, right? The federal government controls most of the powers that probably the state government should have handled. You're having state governors now running to Abuja on a daily basis. Most governors in Nigeria are always in Abuja. And that is why the governors, the penchant of trying to purchase a house in Abuja is high, because of the proximity of the calls that comes from the presidency. So I am having an opinion that we should have a government that the power should be devolved even down to the local government, down to the state, and from the state to the local government level. If you look at the constitution, the exclusive list that the president can only legislate is too numerous. All right, it was just until recently, before the former president left office, that he devolved the power of prison services. That means allowing the governors to interfere as far as the issue of correctional services is concerned.
Well, let me take you back to the number that we have, like currently 45 ministers. We know that 3 were not confirmed, and you know that 10 ministries were added. Now, earlier on I was talking about the fact that if 45 have been sworn in, it's apparent that you find out that in some states there are actually 2 or even 3 ministers. Now, are you concerned about these 10 additional ministries that were either reshuffled or actually carved out? Because I know that Nigerians have continued to clamor for reduction in terms of cost of governance and even the relevance of some of these ministries. Some have called for even the merging of some of these ministries, but we just saw that there were actually 10 ministries which were actually created. Do you think we need more ministries considering this clamor? And then what is even obtainable internationally? In some countries you find out that you just have about 13 departments and functioning very well, but now we are having 45 ministries, 45 ministers sworn in. So, like, does it call for concern?
The point here is this: do we really need 48 ministers for a functional government in Nigeria? I don't think we need 48 ministers, as the case may be. Even though I've always said that in other platforms that the government decide to create opportunities or create jobs for the boys. It's just a matter of creating jobs for the boys, those who had supported the government at one point or the other, and that's why we're having ministers of state.
But what if they perform or they are performing?
No, the point here is this. Festus Keyamo had raised a fundamental issue on whether the government needed the 40 additional ministers outside the 36 states of the federation. Even though, fortunately for him and unfortunately for Nigerians, he still found himself as a minister designate, as a substantive minister, not even a minister designate right now. Right. So the case right now is that we do not actually need even the 48 ministers, because you are having a minister, a substantive minister, to supervise the affairs of a certain ministry, and you are having another minister of state. What function will the minister, the substantive minister, perform, or what function would the minister of state perform that the designative minister cannot perform? That's the issue. And if you go through the records, you discover that during the Obasanjo's administration, we had only 40 ministers. Then under the Yar'Adua administration, we had 39 ministers. Then under the Jonathan administration, we had 33 ministers. Then under the Buhari administration, that's his first tenure, we had 33 ministers. Then the second tenure, we had 36 ministers. Then 42 ministers. Then today, we're having 48 ministers. What is the function of these ministers?
I think you'll respond to
and
that
that's what
after
I
the
said.
break. Let's just go on a quick break so that we can open our phone lines for our callers to call and add their voice. Stay with us. After the break, the conversation continues. For staying with us, and in case you're just joining us, you're on to National Talk on ECWA Television International. We have been discussing Tinubu's new cabinet of 45 ministers alongside Comrade John Kelly, and indeed he has been doing justice to the topic. Do well to call us to add your voice. We're also live on Facebook and YouTube. You can drop your comment as well. So talking about what is obtainable, do we need 48 or 45 ministers? For now, the sworn-in ministers are 45. Do we need them?
And that's what I was saying, that if you read through the Constitution from section 47 downwards, you'll discover that the Constitution says at least, even though that is the ambiguity as far as the laws are concerned. Why didn't the Constitution just say outrightly that the president could nominate one minister per state? So a lot of people are looking at it from that perspective. And today, Niger State, for instance, they have 3 ministers. Taraba State, they have 2 ministers. Bauchi State, they have 2 ministers. You can go on and on. When you aggregate that, you'll see that, and that's what swelled the number. This is the highest as far as Nigeria is concerned. Now, if you're looking at reducing the cost of governance in quantum of the resources that they will go within this period, it goes to tell you that in salaries for the 48 ministers, you're having over 1.4 billion to sustain these ministers. Then in terms of allowances, you'll be having 7.1 billion to sustain also this level. Then allowances is about 8.6 billion. No, if you add this together, the salaries and allowances, and that gives you about 8.6 billion. And this is the same country that is talking about reducing the cost of governance. This is the same country that is talking about inflation. Right now, as I'm talking to you, the inflationary rate in Nigeria is over 24% compared to what it was before. 22.78%. Now we're having about 24 plus percent.
So is this going to be challenging for the newly sworn ministers?
Absolutely. See, it's a clear thing. I am an accountant. And in a real sense, if you're trying to reduce the volume of cash in circulation, you don't need to pump in more cash in circulation. Now, you're pumping in more cash. For instance, under the subsidy regime that the government is talking about, reduce or removing subsidy in its entirety. And the government is giving out 5 billion to each state to cushion the effects of the subsidy. If you aggregate that, it's about 180 plus billion. So you are injecting more cash into the economy. What the Nigerian economy needs at the moment is a productive economy, not a consuming economy. Now, when you inject that, you are only sharing cash to individuals that will be spent spirally overboard. What I had expected was that the government should have looked at other creative sectors of the economy, of investing such funds, so that the government can engage other individuals into production and earning income. Because there's a difference between production and earning. So you're earning an income that you did not work for. It is doomed for an economy. But once you are engaged in a productive sector and you earn an income, it is a legitimate income.
You said it's
unlike
going to
the
be
frank investment income.
You talk about the economy situation, like we're currently battling economic growth and amidst the inflation and all of that. And I just asked a quick question. Do you think it's going to be challenging for the sworn-in ministers? You said yes, but we just watched them express optimism, show their readiness that they are going to carry out their responsibility. They are willing, they are ready. In fact, we saw the likes of Wiki already making visitation at places, saying we're going to all the leakages in terms of all this revenue generation, people that are having building where they shouldn't, they are going to, like, he's going to deal with that. Don't you think that is about the mindset, is about your preparedness to carry out this function rather than economic reality?
A productive economy do not listen to English. I just want to put it that way. Do not listen to English. And what you intend, what I have, what I will, and all that. A productive economy looks at the real sector of the economy and makes intervention. Now, you have over 180 billion. And that was the same thing that happened during the Buhari's administration, where over 1 trillion was shared to individuals. And that swelled our inflationary rate in Nigeria. Because once you share money to individuals that is not earned via a productive sector, it has the tendency of increasing inflation. In a layman language, they say that inflation is too much money chasing fewer goods. And that's what I'm telling you as a professional, that the government shouldn't have been looking at this item of sharing money to individuals, but the government should have been looking at other variables as far as the removal of subsidy is concerned, probably to categorize it in the short term, medium term, and the long-term measures. So within the short-term measures, the government will have fixed those critical areas of the economy that needs intervention. For instance, let's say goods are not produced in the cities. Goods are produced in the rural communities. And what is the nature of the routes from the rural communities to the cities? Most of the rural communities are not connected even with bridges. Did you know how these farmers from the rural communities transport their goods from where they are produced down to the cities? It's quite cumbersome. Okay, let's identify first What are those rural communities that we need to make interventions?
I think these are agendas that will be set for the Minister of Transportation and Works
even
as well.
beyond that, because it's multifaceted. It has to go with the Minister of National Planning and Budget. It goes with the Minister of Finance. It goes even with the CBN governor. You remember that there were years and years ago under the Lamido Sanusi administration, the former CBN governor, where he had given out hundreds of millions to farmers. But unfortunately, to what extent did we see the reality of the production as far as the farming system was concerned? So, in real time, if Nigeria really wants to grow, first of all, address the issue of insecurity. Once you address the issue of insecurity in Nigeria, farmers can freely go to the farm to farm. You remember in Niger State that even the defense ministry had said that the terrorists had told them that that was Garba Shehu. It was to be specific, under the Buhari administration. Garba Shehu had said that the farmers did not take, did not take permission actually from the terrorists before going to the farm, where over 40-something farmers were killed. So once you address the issue of security, it will go to a larger extent. And if you break it down to Plateau State, you remember Barikin Ladi, Rio, Mongu, even at least at the moment. And these are farming communities. These are people that farm for their subsistence.
But comrade, with these 45 sworn-in ministers, what agendas do you think that should be set for them and periodic reviews? Do you think this is something that's going to be
I think basically as individuals, and as I am right now, I cannot begin to set an agenda for them, as the case may be.
We're a citizen of Nigeria.
Fine, I'm a citizen of Nigeria. But let me tell you, every government comes in place with an agenda. And that is why I told you earlier on that this government is coming up with an agenda of a renewed hope. We had an administration of change the change. And we saw what change the change brought to us. It was disastrous. It was terrible. People died. Now we're having a renewed hope. What agenda is the renewed hope bringing to Nigerians right now? I'm bringing a renewed hope. We had thought that the current administration will have brought, some level of relativity and some level of cushioning on the pains that Nigerians went through. But unfortunately, from the first day, even without entering the office, do you know the implication of that? The implication is that a president is reading a speech and the issue of subsidy is not part of the speech. And you now said that subsidy was gone. I remember I told you earlier on that most filling stations locked up their filling stations. And that's where we are right now. Buying fuel at 607, 17 naira. The ripple effect is that every other item, goods and services, is affected. And that's why we have high cost of goods and services. You're buying fertilizer for 20,000 to 25,000. It depends on the brand that you are buying. You're buying rice per bag over 40,000 naira. Right? Now, the schools also will also look at the sector that concerns our workers, the civil service. Because if you are transporting yourself usually from 50 naira and it's now 100 naira, the schools will now increase their tuition fee. And that's what we're having all over. Universities, they are reacting. The market forces are reacting. So basically, I said ab initio that the government should have looked at addressing the main issue. If Nigeria is a productive economy, Nigeria is one of the leading oil producers in the world. And today, if Nigeria have functional refineries, I don't think Nigeria will be buying fuel at 617 naira. I
think listening to the president's inauguration speech while addressing the ministers, he talked about the fact that the factor that actually influenced their selection was their excellence and expertise in both private and public sector. And it is in line with meeting up with the renewed hope agenda that all these people were brought to fore. Now, there's a ministry like the senior minister in charge of the Ministry of Petroleum Resources. It is, as we speak now, there's nobody has been given the portfolio, and a lot of people are speculating that maybe just like President Muhammadu Buhari, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is going to man that particular position. But looking at this continuous, we've seen that even during Obasanjo, him manning up that ministry. Do you think this is a culture that should be sustained? And then how effective has it been? I remember you said you cannot set agenda. Definitely for ministers, based on the power that is being bestowed on the president in Section 5 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, he has that executive power, and then he can exercise it directly or through his vice president or through them ministers. So this ministry and this portfolio, especially in terms of the senior minister, Ministry of Petroleum Resources, should the president man it? Because people are speculating it's possible he's going to man it. And how effective has this been?
You and I in the studio right now, can we absolutely set an agenda for the government of Nigeria? When the government itself has its own agenda, it's practically impossible.
But right, we can hold them accountable.
Fine, that's a different dimension, and that's what I always tell people, that having elected officials of government at various levels, our duty is to hold them accountable. Because we have so elected them into various offices, and that is what we are lacking in this country. That most of the times you elect people, and once they go, you turn your back and you feel you're just watching. You don't watch. What were the promises you made to us? Okay, starting from the councillor, local government chairman, House of Assembly member, House of Reps member, the senator, the governor, and the president. You need to hold these people accountable.
True.
And that is the exact point that we're lacking in this country. You elect individuals into various offices, you end up enriching them. They become mightier than even your voice as a citizen. And we have not actually utilized that level of recall process as guaranteed in the Constitution, because we always fear that will it actually work? That has been the question. Then secondly, the president, looking at the issues that are on ground as it relates to the ministers in place. You're having a minister, except if the government is really ready and willing to address the issues that concerns Nigerians. I bet you it's a one-way traffic.
But where do you draw the line between loyalty and performance? Because these ministers, according to the president, they were actually selected by him based on expertise and excellence, and they were screened and confirmed by the Senate. Now they are supposed to work in line with the renewed hope agenda. Now, where do you draw the line? Because earlier on I heard you talk about interest, that even the three that were nominated, there are some interest and all of that were considered.
Absolutely.
But again, where do we draw the line between performance and loyalty?
And that's where my problem is right now. If I listen to the narration from you elsewhere or from other climes, you will discover that we do not have this number of bogus ministers serving the country. At most, you can even have even 16 supervising certain sensitive ministries, and that goes on. But in Nigeria, you create job for the boys. And the point here is this: the president is the commander-in-chief, and the president directs the way he wants to direct. If you as a minister, as an individual, even if you want to perform, and it's not working in tandem with the wishes of the president personally, I'm using this word personally carefully, not even in the national interest, the president can even call you to question. Because over time, from 1999 till days, I remember when President Olusegun Obasanjo was the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, he appointed advisors, and he said jokingly that even some of the advisors cannot even advise. But why did he appoint those advisors in the first place? Those advisors were appointed based on the interest. Because I know you have what I want. I know probably you control a certain interest. And I need you in my government. I need to shut you up because you're talking too much. I need to close your mouth. Come in and join my government. But don't interfere in the governance of my administration. And that has been the case over time in Nigeria. And that is why we cannot have a streamlined number of ministers. Why can't we have 36 ministers, let's say, for instance, one per state representing the 36 states of the federation? Why are we having 48 ministers representing 36 states? What is the need for a substantive minister and you're also having a minister of state? What is the minister of state doing outside the main substantive minister? It doesn't make sense.
Well, you kept emphasizing on interest.
No, it doesn't make sense.
And all, I quite agree with you. But then it's not like the administration is deaf to what Nigerians are saying, because I remember before now, the minister designate for Ministry of Youth was Abubakar Momo, and people complain about age. Oh, he's 50 and he shouldn't be the Minister of Youth, and he was changed. So don't you think that the president listens and hears what the people are saying?
All right. If you look at all the ministers that have been confirmed and even sworn in as substantive ministers right now, if you check their age brackets, usually that's what we do jokingly. We say, okay, football age. You discover that most of these people fake their age. They don't look their age. They do not. Now, the Ministry of Youth, because I appreciate the fact that the president has separated the Ministry of Youth from the Ministry of Sports. Because initially it was Ministry of Youth and Sports. We had also Ministry of Information and Communication. The president has separated it from Ministry of Information and also Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy. All right. For the Ministry of Youth, we should have a younger person looking at the United Nations Convention that categorically states who a youth is. But I have said I've worked or I have served as a youth member within the Plateau Youth Council. I have been the interim chairman of the Plateau Youth Council in Just North local government. I have served as a member of parliament at the state level as a youth. So if you're looking at the categorization of who a youth is, that shouldn't be the age having someone who is above 50 years to represent the youth.
And no wonder the president changed the ministry of
because
Momo.
We understand our communication. As a younger person, the way you are right now, we can communicate in our own language. There are terms that we could use amongst ourselves and it's acceptable.
So should it be about that or about performance?
No, the performance is there, is a key index. Because, for instance, if you are appointing a younger person into that ministry, first, relatability is there, and also the ability to perform the functions of the office is also there. Not having someone who is 60 years old, wearing a pickup, jean trousers, and a canvas, and he calls himself that a youth at heart.
All right, let me draw your attention. What we're looking at. Let me draw your attention to Section 147 of the 1999 Constitution that talks about the minister's office and eventually the performance of the ministers. It's definitely going to be documented against the president because he appointed them and they are supposed to work in terms of meeting the renewed hope agenda. Now, what can the president do? You said earlier on we can't set agenda for this minister. So what can the president do to ensure unity of purpose? What can he do to ensure direction and even coordination amongst these ministers? Already concerns have been, these 45 ministers, additional, I think additional 10 ministries, there might be conflict of roles and all of that. So what role can the president play to ensure unity of purpose, direction and coordination?
Well, basically, once you are appointed as a minister, you are appointed to serve a particular function based on the agenda of the government, as the case may be. Now, as individuals, you may have your personal view on how you want to run the affairs of your ministry. But if you do not have a supportive president that supports the view, because for instance, let me say, I as an individual, if you give me an opportunity to handle a particular sphere, I could bring my own initiatives, right? But I'll communicate that to you as my leader. I won't just go about executing my own personal initiative without discussing with you. If you now give me the consent of handling the affairs of the certain ministry that you had given me, then it goes cool, right? Because I know for sure that what I have as an individual, out of my ingenuity, will not be against the interest of the government I'm running. Because I know that I cannot work outside the box of what we have an agenda. Because first, I'll look at what is renewed hope in the first instance. And within the renewed hope agenda, I can calibrate within that phrase and bring out certain ingredients that would add value to the system. But unfortunately, what we'll be having over time is that we're having the same recurring decimal phases. It's more like a compensation. And that's what I've seen over time in Nigeria. You compensate individuals that support you during campaigns. You give individuals priorities that are giving you probably cash in the process of your campaigns and what have you. But you do not look at the ingredients of adding value into the system. Now, if you checked critically, there are critical players, what do you call them now? Technocrats, who are also politicians. Because if you are a technocrat and you are also a politician, that means that in your field of performance, you can also add value within the system.
Indeed, adding value, I think, is the key interest and what every Nigerian citizen is actually looking out for. Our time is actually fast spent. Sorry to cut you, but I hope you create time to be with us some other time.
Hope so.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on these 45 ministers that have been sworn in. Indeed, the ball have been set to roll, and there are a lot of expectation. If the administration is talking about renewed hope, the economic hardship that the people are faced with needs to be addressed, and we hope that the needful is being done. Thank you for staying with us on National Talk. Until we come your way next time, you have a blessed night.